All right. Everybody, I am honored actually after like the day we've been through today, where we talk about um, uh, how we can be using AI tools, how we can be thinking of ourselves as influential and important in our industry and in our work. I really enjoyed Matt's session this morning, and as we wrap up today with a day of really, really fantastic talks, I want to talk about how we can use our superpowers as learning and development professionals to be guiding, leading in our organizations around this AI transformation. And there's a lot of talk about the kinds of things that we can be doing in our own worlds with AI, but our organization has a far bigger need than just that. And I want to kind of level up. In fact, this is the picture outside my window about 5 minutes ago. Um,
Wow.
and I thought, wow, like if I post this picture, they're gonna say this is what I'm saying about what's going on in L&D. And it's not. You'd think it is some days if you look at LinkedIn, right? You'd think it is some days. And the but I want to talk differently. In fact, about 35 minutes before I took that picture, I realized I was leaving the house and coming to my office with this shirt on. And I had this shirt on because there's a big disaster of dog today. And so I put on just something comfortable as opposed to my, like, I don't want to wear my work presenting shirt to handle a big disaster of dog. And then I realized the shirt I have on says "Be the Change." And it's a shirt I bought actually for our entire leadership team at Torrance Learning a few years ago as a mindset of like, it's my Q shirt, right? CUE. It's my Q shirt. It's the when I need to remind myself that I need to step up and step in. I can't, like, it's not just a, oh, I don't have time, or oh, nobody invites me to the table, or oh, nobody listens to L&D. It's like, no, I am going to start being exactly what I want to see in the world. So I decided to leave it on because it's Zoom and you can't smell the shirt. So as we think about our roles, right? I actually think we have a really, really important role to play in our organization's future, right? But we often, as much as we say we want a seat at the table, we often, I fear, lack a guide to engage strategically. Like, what are we going to do when we get to the table? That's an important question. And that's really what is Jamie mentioned. Because yes, right, everybody's got a book about AI these days, and I'm one of them. But one of the things that I have throughout my entire career, aside from being kind of right all over, right, agile and data and AI and racial equity and all sorts of stuff, right? Lots of different XAPI, lots of XAPI, learning technologies. It's all around how do we level up our industry, our profession, our work to provide amazing service for the people that we support because we have an incredible mission. So today's session is kind of like a preview for the book. And so I'm kind of letting you in on this. We're going to start a little bit with some mindset and framing after a day full of fantastic sessions. Your mind's in the right spot, but I've got a couple additional tweaks for us. I'm going to talk about what I call AI impact zones for L&D, right? And three distinct places in which support organizations and impact and are impacted by what's going on with artificial intelligence. I then want to talk about where a logical place for learning and enablement professionals play, which is what I call learning into the change, not just leaning into the change, but learning into the change. And then talk about spend most of our time actually on leading the change and how we can really step in and help our organizations. We'll then talk a little bit about what comes next right before you close off for Friday evening and I think we actually have fantastic weather in Michigan. So I'm pretty excited about that too. Uh, I would be remiss if I didn't kind of do our Torrance Learning touchstone here, which is our learning science and experience design commitments. They really influence how we design every learning and performance experience. And where we don't put this screen in front of every learner we build a program for, because that would be kind of weird. Since we are all people in this profession together, I'm just going to tell you where we're leaning in. So learning science and experience, LSX, 10 design commitments that help us really just level up everything we do. But each conversation, each program, each experience has a few things that are a little extra. It's where our emphasis is. And so our emphasis today is really around how what we are about to learn is a competitive advantage for us and the organizations we work for. Um, our conversations that we have today, these different perspectives are going to make this a much stronger learning experience. And that lasting behavior change. Like I mentioned, you're going to finish this. You're either going to leave that room or you're going to close your Zoom room, do a couple emails, and you'll be out for the weekend. And your brain is going to go bzz, and then Monday, you're going to start back up doing all the same normal things. So I have an opportunity for you to jot down some notes and some thoughts and receive some information back that extends those thinking. And that can help you get started on Monday when you pick back up. I've got my chat window open, so go ahead and drop in questions anytime you go. Or we're a nice tiny group. Just take yourself off mute and shout it out. So let's have a conversation amongst friends here as we go. Um, our mindset as individuals, as professionals, as leaders on our team, as members of an organization, and some of you as leaders of organizations, our mindset about anything, right, matters. And there's a lot going on in the AI space. And some of us are anchoring on like it's moving fast and everybody's getting results and lots of money is being spent and everybody has agents that do everything. Right? And it's exciting and wonderful. Why don't I get to do all that cool stuff? And at the other side, we feel like it's doom and it's gloom. And there's on my way here, in between the Be the Change shirt and the destruction across the street, I heard that Meta announced that they're going to lay off 10% of their workforce, again, because of either because of efficiencies gained through AI or in order to free up capital to invest in AI, right? So there's a lot going on and it feels very tumultuous, right? Um, this is just another step in decades of artificial intelligence progression and technology capabilities. And each time something new comes about, everybody's like, ho, 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 and then it settles down. And over the years, the things that we may have called artificial intelligence early on just really now seem like good programming. Right? I often ask people, I used to ask like, hey, what'd you do with involved in artificial intelligence today? And they'd say, nothing. I don't touch that stuff. And yet they used Uber and Maps and they shopped and the weather and their Alexa, all these things that we just don't even think of as using AI, right? So along comes generative AI and it seems very different. But here's the thing. This is different because historically, we didn't, especially not in L&D, we did not have access to those tools. Maybe as consumers, we were users, but not influencers. Within our organization as L&D, we may have been affected by, but not a lot, right? Because this powerful computing opportunity sat behind walls. behind walls of expertise, organizational silos, budget, power, and hierarchy, right? And now, like, it's just in a web browser. And anybody can use it, and it seems simple. So I want you to be thinking that this is a progression. It's a big step, but it is a progression. Those of you who have got as much gray hair as me, um, right? When the internet came out, right? No kidding. When I was in business school, one of my assignments, but only one of my assignments in only one of my classes, was to send 2 emails to the professor, not on the same day. And as funny as that is, the amount of whining and moaning that full-grown adults paying $26,000 a year to get that education put up about that assignment was astonishing, right? So, and by the way, this will not be our last big change. I think that's the one thing that sometimes like quiets the room, right? This is not going to be the last earth-shattering change before we retire. I said, look around, most of you are not yet that close to retirement. Can't see all of you. There's chuckling in the room. Did somebody in the room announce their retirement?
Well, I'm close.
Okay. Well, then this may be your last professional big change. So as we think about this, right? A lot of times we just talk about AI as though it's one big thing. It is a technology. That's like saying the internet, as though the internet is one big thing, or social media is one big thing, right? And yet we know that there are different kind of categories and classes of these things, and we interact and are impacted by them differently. So I've kind of thought of things in 3 zones. Zone 1 is our own professional productivity as L&D folks, right? And so think about your video tools, your voiceover tools, your translation tools, your content development tools, your writing partner in whatever conversational bot that you use. If you are using AI to analyze information as you explore needs, as you analyze performance results at the end, right? That's your own personal productivity, and just your experience management, right? So we use HowSpace, which is a tool that it mediates a asynchronous social learning experience. It's supported by a facilitator, and it's got tons of AI support, learner facing, but also AI support to help a facilitator scale, right? Super cool stuff. Okay. At the end of the day, though, in zone 1, whatever we produce is no longer doing AI. I may use AI to make a video or an image or a piece of text, but at the end of the day, the content is an MP4, an MP3, or a doc file, right? So it's no longer doing AI. That's zone 1. It helps us be super helpful or super useful and super fast and proficient and all that good stuff. But we're still making the same kinds of stuff. In zone 2, that's where we're putting AI in front of learners, whether it's a conversational chatbot or a performance support coach. We talked a lot about the chatbots within the during Esther's session, right? That learner experience and performance enablement. And now we have a different duty of care when we put AI in front of a learner, right? And so it's a different level because now they are exposed to all of these challenges. And then zone 3 is something different altogether. Zone 3 is when the business changes. And it affects what we have to train people because their processes are different. It affects the skill sets that we hire for because they're doing something different. We may need to reskill people as you move them from one place to another, right? And this zone 1 and 2 are pretty much our domain. We pick the vendors, we pick the tools, we make the decisions. Zone 3, we are often like an add-on to an already existing project. Okay? So what I'd like to do is let's have a conversation about where your organization's efforts are most focused right now. Is it zone one? And we can put this in the chat or just come off mute, right? Is it zone one around productivity for the L&D team? Zone two, AI in front of the learners and the workers? Or zone three, where we're changing the business process itself, and that happens to affect us? Okay, Lori says zone one, Steph says zone one, Kathleen says zone one and two.
Are off mute if anybody wants to shout things out to her.
All right, in the room, do me a favor. We're going to go old school here because I can see you. Raise your hand if you're doing zone one stuff. Okay, almost everybody. Raise your hand if you're doing zone two stuff. I love whoever's off the side there. I can see you. Okay, raise the hand if your organization is doing zone three stuff. Little bit here and there. Yeah, okay. So I had a conversation last year at ATD 26 in DC, 25, and similar, right? Lots of zone one, some zone two. People are like, oh, I'm curious about products, and very little zone three, or zone three is happening in your organization and you're just not being invited to it. Okay? So we're going to talk about that. And you know what? That's not different than any other major change in your organization, right? It's happening, and then you get invited to the game, generally pretty late before it's possible to generate a whole lot of input into the conversation. When you get invited to the conversation, I want to give you something to talk about. So that's what the session is about today. So let's get personalized. What I want to do is have an opportunity for you to receive an AI-generated debrief based on insights from the book in this session and my thinking around this, but specific to you and one of your projects at work. So you just raised your hand or put in chat or thought silently to yourself about something happening in your organization related to AI. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to fill out a Google form, right? So we're using a little bit of automation and a little bit of generative AI. Right? So you're going to fill out a Google form as we go today, right? Don't hit submit yet, right? So and I'll give you the QR code and the link in a minute, right? You're going to fill out a Google form if you want. We will then, right, ingest that. We're using Zapier, which is an automation tool. We're using Claude on this as well. 4.6 because it moves a little bit faster than 7. We're also including Torrance Learning's W.I.S.E AI guardrails, which we'll talk about in a little bit today, and other safeguards around your information. But also, please, when you do this, use code names. Don't like tell me your organization's like secrets deep down and whatnot. So I'm trying to be really, really upfront about where your stuff goes. And if you have a vendor who's asking you to demo some stuff and they're not being this careful, I'd like you to pause and be this careful. Remember to remember this. And then you'll receive an AI-generated insights email. Right now, it will come from Matt Cleaver on my team, but it'll say AI Canvas on your in the subject line so you can recognize it. So if you are on a phone, you can click this. If you are on a computer or want to do this on a computer, you can type in this quick URL or click it. I just put it in the chat. And again, just open this up. You can look at it. You can reuse this anytime you want. You can share this with other folks. Yes, if we were talking about unicorns, he is Matt Cleaver on our team is absolutely one of our unicorns. We have kind of like a whole like unicorn farm at Torrance Learning. I have like the best job ever. I get to work with
That's
these.
what I said in Betty's session. Yeah, I was like, I work with literal unicorns.
So, okay. So that'll come along. It's also just a fun example, right? So learning person to learning person. I love demonstrating concepts, right? Using concepts and demonstrating concepts and getting all meta here. This is a relatively simple AI automation that you can build, or we can give you the instructions for building or whatever. So it's relatively simple and straightforward. And admittedly, while Matt Cleaver is a unicorn, technically I could have done this myself. That's how low tech it is. Um, so these impact zones, though, that we were talking about a minute ago, they're not like I start with one and then I move to two and then I go to three. They're actually not even necessarily distinct from each other. So it's entirely possible your organization is doing multiple things at multiple zones all at the same time. So if you're tired, there's a reason why. Because there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, right? So the next setup I want to talk about is something that we call, right, this learning into the change. Part one of where does the learning team come to the rescue here? Right? How do we help? And one of the things that we do at Torrance Learning, and that I think many learning folks do, right, is we make things easy to digest, learn, and use pretty quickly. And early on in the Gen AI space, we created this framework called W.I.S.E AI. And it originated in a time when there were not a lot of AI policies. Right? Now, many organizations, including tiny ones like mine, have fairly robust and usable AI policies, right? Governance teams and standards and things like that. But then I ask people, where are your AI policies? Do you remember what's in them? And I get, and people kind of like try to fade out of frame, right? Because it's like it's right. The average policy isn't easy to use. So WISE AI has actually gotten a fair amount of legs and utility even after organizations have developed policies around it. Right. So we look at wisdom and application. Right. Is this a good thing to use AI for in the first place? Are we using inclusive data sets? And I'm talking about inclusivity both in social dynamics, but also, do I have good data? Right? Am I being safe and secure with this data about users, about customers and students, about our organization's secret sauce? Like, am I doing smart things with this data? Am I treating people equitably and fairly? Am I taking accountability? And do I have processes in place and training, right? How can I be the best human in the loop to be that human in the loop when I take accountability? And are we being very transparent about when AI is being used? Right, so that's WISE AI. We use this in a number of ways. You can think about how do you use your own AI literacy experience. Ours ended up being so useful internally that we now sell it externally to teams, and it's customizable for your own industry and good stuff, right? Everybody on our team takes the AI Driver's Permit course before they're allowed to have tools, right? And we refresh it because it's not a one and done, right? We share what we're doing. We talk very openly about, hey, I used AI to this because my thoughts were kind of all over the place. Our clients have a say in how and whether AI is used on their projects. And if they say no, we don't do it. We inform our learners when AI is being used as part of the experience, and we track and analyze and review those outputs. We're actually creating a dashboard we call a Madge, and Madge watches what our AI tools do so that we can be keeping track of them and making sure they're staying on message, right? And that we can intervene, including and up to actually like shutting them down, pulling the plug, right? If they get out of hand. And making this WISE AI super useful and practical is helpful. Oh, and we also have WISE AI goes into we have GPT and skill best practices, and the WISE AI guardrails go into the knowledge for every GPT and every skill, right? That's really important to us. We see that whole pile of stuff, though, in the AI literacy space. So learning and development professionals, do me a favor. Have you been involved in creating AI literacy training in your organization? In the room, go ahead, raise your hand. Online, go ahead. Neither. Yep. So I've got a nope in the chat. I've got Kathleen's nodding yes. Michelle's saying not yet. Right? Lots of different answers. Okay. This is one of the spaces where we can participate. Right? AI literacy is just the start. Often it's run by compliance. Often it's here's how it works. Now don't do it. Or be safe out there. Right? It's not a bad starting point. Right? It's like putting on elbow pads and knee pads before you go rollerblading, not after. Okay? AI proficiency is how do I make the most out of this tool? How do I make it hum? AI fluency is how do we as a team, as an organization learn? How do we build not only the skills and the knowledge, but the team capability and mindset around learning together? And all of this is in service of AI innovation, right? But as we move along the way, right, because of using these tools to do something different, there's a lot of learning that needs to be happening. And all the same things that we teach our leaders and our team members, right, is both influenced by and influences our AI literacy, proficiency, and fluency. So we've come a ways here, right? We've got an introduction to just the mindset and the possibilities. We have the AI impact zones and kind of ways in which we are engaging with AI tools. And we have a framework and a recognition of the work that we do in learning and development, specifically around our organizational learning around AI. All of that is probably what folks expect the learning and development team to be doing, right? But we have a certain set of what I call superpowers because we see the world differently than the folks in accounts payable and customer service and operations and the truck drivers and the computer guys and all sorts of stuff. We see the world differently. I joke, Jamie's going to laugh at this, and anybody on my team who's signed in, right? I call it instructional designers ruin everything. It's not that we ruin everything, it's just that we see the world differently, right? How often do you go into an elevator bank and think, oh my gosh, if the building is burning and I'm a fire person and I've got to read 8 directions to know which way to turn the silly key in the elevator to make it work, like that doesn't make any sense, right? If the building is burning and I have to look at a fire extinguisher and figure out is this an A or a B or a C fire, like that doesn't make any sense. And we see the world differently, and we're the ones who say, like, hey, like there's a different way here. Right? So we bring these superpowers. We also, when we're meeting with a group of people, we notice who's nodding their heads, smiling, and going along, who's kind of all furled up and grouchy, who's quiet, who's loud, who are we hearing from? We look around the room, and if we're talking about the front line and we look around and there's nobody from frontline in the room, we know this is a bad idea. This is what we do. We're also really good at asking questions of people who know things more than we do because that's what we do. And here's the kicker. We have a network within the organizations we serve that is broader, deeper, and higher than the average person in our spot. And while nobody will say that learning and development is the power, the seat of power in the organization, right? We actually have an incredible network and access to a lot that's going on. So with that in mind, I want to propose that we be the change and step in and offer our talents. right? Because we know how organizations get AI wrong. In fact, those articles I mentioned before, if you you go through them and you say, like, great, take all these articles. Actually, I used AI to help me to do this, right? Take all these articles. What are the themes here? Why do projects fail? Why do the companies who say they're not getting what they want out of AI? What's going on? And these are the things that are going on. Right? So knowing that, we know what the problems are. We have this mindset around this. We have this unique skill set, right? We have this unique skill set. The AI implementation canvas gives us 14 different conversations to be having. I call them planning dimensions, right? To be having as the organization brings about any individual or set of AI changes. Okay? Bringing on an AI translation tool for your videos, you can have these 14 conversations around that implementation. Turning on skills in Claude for everybody to make their own skills, absolutely. Have 14 different conversations, 14 different topics to make sure that you've covered as you go. Changing how your organization processes claims or does quality assurance using AI vision, right? You had the opportunity to have 14 different conversations to make sure that you're moving forward in a planful way. That it's not just being, I love my folks in IT, right? But it's not just being driven by IT or somebody with a great idea that they saw on YouTube. And so you could either have a wide open canvas or, right, a little bit more packed canvas. And the goal of the canvas is not for you to show up with answers. I'll give you a hint. The book, right, the AI implementation guide for L&D doesn't have the answers. It has lists of questions. It's actually been described by the editor at ATD Press as the world's biggest job aid. It has lists of questions. He claims that was a compliment. It has lists of questions that you can use, people that you can bring in the conversation to make sure that you've covered all these things. So when you show up at the table or the meeting or the conversation, you can say, hey, like, what were the decisions that we made as we moved? Like, how did we decide which experiments and pilots to run? What are the steps we need to take as we scale this up, and who do we need to involve? Has anybody looked at the regulatory and legal impacts of what this is? And how do we make sure that nobody's putting dumb stuff in there that's going to get us all in trouble? Who decides whether or not we can do this? All of these are great questions. You don't have to have the answers, but your organization needs to make sure that they have had these questions asked and answers. This is an actual canvas we did on an old layout of it for a project we're doing with a very large federal government client. We're bringing in some of their first AI. This is a zone 2 or an impact zone 2 implementation. We're putting an AI tool in front of learners, many, many, many learners. So we had this as a conversation, and we did it in a Miro board. This is a screenshot. Okay. So each one of the impact zones, we're going to use that canvas a little bit differently. If it's our own L&D productivity, we're going to really focus in on governments and data use and privacy and security and some of those things. We're going to look at what it means for our own user experience and workflows. Overall, we can take a relatively light touch because the risk is a little bit lower. Maybe, right? It's worth you having the conversation with your team. When we're putting AI into a zone 2 implementation, we have a slightly higher risk and impact because we've got a different duty of care, right? We're going to bring the business sponsor in, we're going to bring the learners in, and it's a little bit more critical than when it's our own tool. We know that we're keeping track of things because we may have fantastic AI literacy and skills, but when we roll that out to other people, they may not have the skills to be able to assess that well. Within our own business workflows, right, in a zone 3, then it's a much higher ante, right? So this then is when we want a cross-functional conversation. project is probably underway by the time we arrive, although we do this a few times and we will probably start being involved in conversations earlier. Okay. And this is an opportunity to onboard ourselves to what's going on, to look around the table and see who else isn't here. Should they be involved? And to start asking questions. So what I want to do is I want to spend some time going through and looking at questions at each, we've got time, this is great, at each of the 14 planning dimensions. And I'd love to get your sense for what is interesting and engaging for you here. And so I believe, and if somebody who is online has the opportunity to let me know that if you hover your mouse over your lower left, you will get to the on-screen scribbles toolbar. It's a little green pencil. I'm sure Zoom has a nicer name for it than on-screen scribbles toolbar, but and then if you go up there, you click that, you then have a check box, which is a stamper, and then you have the ability to select a stamp, and then you can stamp on things. There we go. Those of you in the room, if you have your laptops open, feel free to stamp all over things if you want. Okay. Awesome. So we've demonstrated those, or you could just shout out like what's getting you excited as we go through things. Oh, annotate. Thank you, Lori. I appreciate that. On-screen stamper is a little bit, or on-screen scribble is a little bit more fun, but yes, the annotate tool. Okay. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to come down here. I'm going to clear everybody's drawings out. And when we zoom in on strategic foundations, I put this in the upper left of the canvas because it's a great place and like a foundation for everything else, right? So here in the Western world, we typically read top to bottom, left to right. And so I've got this one up here, and it seems like a darn good place to start, right? So when we think about business alignment and value proposition, I'll actually be quiet here for a moment and let everybody use that stamper tool. Go ahead and let me know which of these questions feels really salient to you. Those of you in the room, if you want to shout out one, that's like, ah, that's a good one. Lots of love for all of them. I love it. My measurement friends, right? Awesome. Awesome. Good stuff. Okay. One of my favorite questions is how will you know if it's working? Right? How do we even know? If we look at AI readiness, now here's one thing that's important about AI readiness. I don't include AI literacy here. Right? I have that as its own thing. Here I'm thinking about processes, capacity, change management. Like, do we have the skills to do this? Do we have a team that's ready to do this? Yeah. Do leaders support this? And do we even have the energy to do this right now? One of my best friends is building an AI supported learning experience for a group of new hires, only to realize that the foundational knowledge that she will need to build that on, right? The SOPs, the how to do this, right? The procedures don't even exist. So her entire first batch of work is to write up, how do I do the job? She has to build that in order to be able to build the rest, right? That's phase one of an AI project, is decidedly not AI driven, right? Love it. And then what do we need to do? What do we need to provide for the team from a skill set perspective to be able to even take this on in the first place? We then look at workforce impact and talent planning. What does this do to job roles? What kinds of internal mobility might this free up? How will we support, right, in that period in which things get harder before they get easier? How do we support people there? One of the things I want you to see in each one of these questions so far is that they're not necessarily AI specific, right? Just really smart implementation planning. And I'm really, real also fascinated with, right? What do we do with the time that we free up for people? And are we able to take that time and build their skills to be able to do more strategic work and the innovation that the organization needs going forward? Christina, I think you have a really, really insightful question here. If you didn't see it in the chat, folks, I think these questions might not have answers. I think that might be what makes the most interesting questions. Right? And the fact that we have these conversations may be the most important part, right? Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally resonating with that. The last of our strategic foundations area is the regulatory and legal environment. Right? Europe is leading the way here. California, New York leading the way here. I don't think it's sustainable just to say, hey, we don't have laws here yet. I don't know of any laws. They're coming. How do we prepare for that? And by the way, GDPR applies here too. FERPA and HIPAA apply here too. And then some. For my XAPI friends, gosh, I'm loving that there's getting so much traction around documentation, disclosures, and audit trails. This is XAPI's moment. Finally, right? The XAPI is a fantastic way to document what's going on. It's actually our tool of choice for that. What that then does is gives you an organized data source to feed back into AI for the future, stripped of individual data. Okay. Oh, good stuff. Woo! Sorry, I went the wrong direction. There we go. Okay. So that's the end of the strategic foundation section. So those of you who are not seasick yet, those of you who are following along with the Google form and the tool, go ahead and go back to the strategic foundations section and note down which one of those seems like the biggest challenge for you in the project that you're working on right now. Right? Choose one that you'd really like to get some feedback on, or it might be the biggest gap for your organization. Let's do the same thing around technology and experience infrastructure. You may not, as a learning and development professional, be leading in this space, but you have the opportunity to ask some questions to onboard yourself to what's going on. So technology and experience infrastructure, what jumps out of you here? What's one or two things you would want to know? Yeah, that question about training data, right? Where is it getting its answers? It's really important, right? And when getting it right is really important, we can participate there. It's a tool called Mobile Coach, and it's an AI-powered rules-based chatbot. It's got like the best of all the worlds in one tool. We love it. Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. People in the room, I keep forgetting you're there because I'm seeing all the stuff online. Is there anything that jumps out at any of you in the room?
Anything that looks great for the room, from the room? Anything you're interested in?
It's a little warm in here, Megan, so everybody's just kind of like, oh, taking it all in.
Coffee up. But hey, Jamie, next time we do this, send everybody with my little afternoon caffeine gummies. I have like,
Ooh,
they're like coffee, like
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
gummy treats. I promise it's just caffeine in there, but they're great for an afternoon picking up.
A little
Anybody
secret
going
weapon.
to CD 28 or 26? 28, I'll probably have them there too. We'll have them at our booth. Awesome. So here's something that was interesting in my research for the book. Um, I found a really fantastic surprise that several of the projects that failed that I was researching failed not because they weren't great technology solutions, but because the user experience was so horrible and the overall workflow was so horrible, which was just kind of
That's an important part of it.
go ahead,
That's an
sorry.
important part, Megan. Thank you.
And here's the thing, right? Because it is such an important part. That's something that our superpowers in learning and development can see, right? So we have experience that workflow is really, really important. Will I always need to write a full paragraph prompt if you've given me this tool for in the moment customer service? It just doesn't work that way. Like I don't have time, right? And it's so funny. So the third one in this space is governance, right? How do we decide what tools we can use? Who decides what tools we can use? How do we open up experimentation if we have locked down procedures about who and what we can use? Right? Governance, hilariously enough, if you asked anybody about 4 years ago about governance, they'd be like, oh, that's boring. Couldn't imagine a more boring topic. I now know 3 chief AI governance officers or AI governance directors, right? It's now a hot job title. When we think about design and implementation enablers, okay, I think about how do we experiment? How do we scale what works? How do we decide what works? And how do we measure what we're getting out of it? What are the metrics? Right? So experimentation, there's all sorts of cool things that we can be doing. And then how do we support experiments? How do we make sure they're safe? How do we organize them so it's not like I've heard, right, have you heard the term random acts of AI? Right? How do we make sure that we're paying attention across the organization to what's going on? When we talk about scaling and integration, I will tell you the difference between making a great prompt or a great GPT or gem or skill, right? It's very different than scaling up something you're going to put in front of tens, hundreds, thousands of people. Right? The infrastructure is different. The costs can go bananas, right? Or could be super cheap, but you've got to be looking at it and be smart around there. And then what are we measuring? How are we measuring? How quickly are we getting data about what we're measuring? And what unintended outcomes should we be looking at? And then, don't hate me for this, I intentionally leave human-centered adoption and change to the lower right Because after I've considered all of the rest of that, it's a really good point to come and have this human touch point. It's also the place where our L&D friends are going to feel most comfortable. Right? So we're going to finish with where we're comfortable. We're going to open the conversation where we're uncomfortable, and we're going to finish where we can shine. How are we supporting change management? Right? How do we track and celebrate effective adoption and confidence? How do we lift up the people who are doing great things and support those who are struggling? How much AI literacy do we need to make sure that we have throughout the organization? I'll tell you a hint too. One of the things I've noticed is that in the process of pitching new AI projects in organizations, I have to make sure that the leaders making the decisions also have the AI literacy and the skills to be able to make good decisions. And that's a set of messages that I am providing along the way as we do this. I'm not just doing the thing, I am teaching about the doing of the thing so that we can do the thing. Right? We look at social engagement. How do we make sure that people are still connecting to each other as people? And this is not just an AI thing, although if I have a perfectly fantastic, never tired, never annoyed with me, no matter how annoying I might be, because I can be, AI chatbot, right? I can do all my work all by myself. I can't, but it looks like I can, right? But I'm also, right? I may be working at home. I read a social media feed that is tailored just to me and what I like. Right? We have all these ways in which people are risk getting very, very small worlds. How do we keep that social engagement? That's actually why I love that for this session, there's a room full of people connecting with each other. That's huge. Right? And how do we make sure that we are fair, that we are protecting humans in this process? Their jobs, their psyches, their opportunities, right? This is an opportunity, right? AI presents a space, yet another space in which we can be widening the gap between haves and have-nots. There are differences in gender and racial profiles of the people who adopt AI, of the people who are encouraged to use it, and the people who are thought of as looking smarter when they do use it. Okay? How do we make sure that we're taking good care of that? So there you have it. That's the AI implementation canvas, right? It can be used in a variety of different ways. I want you to put on your very best facilitator hat and think of all the different ways in which you can use a tool like this. We even made, oh, I don't have them. They're packed in our booth to go to Los Angeles. Implementation canvas decks. You deal cards out and have everybody tackle a question, right? So in our final minutes together here, what skills will you need in order to have these conversations? If you've now got 14 conversations to have as you bring about AI projects in your organization, what skills do you need to do that? In the room, you can talk to each other. You can put that in the chat. There you go, Diana, right? Absolutely. We need to know about AI ourselves. But what else? What skills would you suggest early career folks pick up if they've got to have these conversations, if this is now part of their L&D job?
Adaptability,
Yes.
change,
Leadership for sure. AI ethics. Yes. Actually, Margaret Spence has a book, When AI Breaks the Law. That's an eye-opener. Okay? Comfort with ambiguity, discomfort and change. Yeah, totally. We asked this question at a previous session. These are the kinds of things they said. Lots and lots of skills that we need and that people in our organizations need. Right? Salesmanship, absolutely. Good one, Brandon. Influence, persuasion, if you don't want to think about it as sales, right? So everyone,
Very specific, but I said, it's very specific, but the courage to go first. Like, who's gonna go first? And I think that the biggest thing, and especially for me as L&D and valuing learning, is giving up that AI is gonna be knowledgeable and it's not a competition, right? Like, I still have value in my knowledge, even if they do it in 0.5 seconds. Yeah. Right? And then there's the value in how I can mold what AI creates.
Yeah.
Right? So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Everyone, this has been fantastics. This is, I said fantastics because I was reading Michelle's one, AI advocates. Yes, right. So it's, I think there's so much opportunity here, and an opportunity to continue the conversation. So, if you're going to be at any of these places, and some of these are online places, in the coming months, of course, I'll be at ATD 26. If you will be at ATD 26, you now don't need to go to my session. You go to a different session. That sounds funny to say. But I would love to continue the conversation and keep chatting. There are more. This is a different URL and a different QR code, but this is a page that gets all sorts of information. It's got a download of the Canvas. Jamie, we need to remember to get the current version of the Canvas put up there. So download of the Canvas, access to all sorts of stuff, free tools, free information, none of which require you to sign up for anything. So this is just out there. So go and grab that stuff. So everyone, thank you so much for all the chapters at ATD here in Michigan who put on this fantastic of event. Thank you. This is such a special thing that I don't know that anybody else does. So kudos to you.